games. It's ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames.
How's it going, Scrub Gamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we have the next of our Understanding How to Build series, where we go over all the leaders in a given set to help you understand how to build them to suit you and your playstyle. So, we've gone through all the other leaders, now we're on to Cunning, and we're just off the dark side, so we're starting off today with Barriss Offee. And if you're interested, stay tuned, and also don't forget, you can also like, comment and subscribe to keep updated with our videos as when they drop, and also by clicking that notification bell, you can then get alerts when our videos do drop, so you can watch them there and then, or later time that suits you best. Now, we also have, not long ago, reached our goal, 2,000 clubs. We finally reached our goal. That means our next one is going to be 3,000. So if you want to help us get to that next point, then feel free to help out. And if you have already, thank you very much. So without further ado, let's get into the video and help you understand how to build a Barriss Offee. So what we're going to do is start with the leader first, because Star Wars Unlimited is a leader-based game, and that base game means that you can't really play without one. And they're usually going to be what you build your deck around, because each one has a different effect. So, with Barriss Offee, who is We Have Become Villains, is a pretty interesting leader, because in the set, every leader has the Force trait, so everyone's going to have the Force and be a Force user. But with Barriss, she has the traits Force, Jedi, Republic, which is quite unique, since it's normally they're normally traits you see on a heroic leader or heroic cards, not on the villainy ones. So this is the first villainy leader that is a Jedi, which is pretty cool, and a Republic. So she's got some great traits going there. That means you get some cards that you normally only play in one side of the one aspect and the other aspect, which is cool. She also does deploy not too late, but not too early, at 6 resources, and when she does deploy, using her epic action, she comes down as a 4/7, which is pretty solid stats. 7 health is a good amount, and 4 damage is very, very good. Now, she is one of those units that needs to use the Force, so it will require you, if you want to get the full effect of her, to use one of the Force bases, and it's the same thing for both sides. So whereas normally a leader has a Force effect, or effect that requires the Force on the leader side, most of the time, when they deploy, they no longer need to use the Force. I can then just do it, basically use the effect, but using the Force. But Barriss is a little bit different in that she used to use the Force on both sides. So her effect is essentially the same on both sides, since it just changes in terms of the cost. The cost changes a little bit slightly, and the effect on both sides are an action, and you need to use the Force, and then you play an event from your hand, and it costs 1 less. So it means you can play out events a little bit cheaper than they normally cost. So a 1-cost event could be absolutely free, a free cost could only cost 2, things like that. So you can play it a little bit earlier than normal. The only difference in those effects is that when she's in lead area, you need to tap her to do it. Whereas when she's deployed and out and about, you just need to use an action, use the Force, and then do the effect. It's pretty cool there. And she provides you the aspects of villainy and cunning. So that is basically a leader. So she's all about using the Force to play out events a little bit cheaper. And you have got some leaders that do play things a little bit cheaper, but they usually come with different costs. But hers is effects, playing events cheaper, but you need to use the Force. So good thing we have Force bases and the mechanic to do so. Also, there's a showcase for Barriss Offee as well, because this is what every leader has now. Since even with the Vader and Luke leaders, they will have showcases now. So every leader has a showcase, and this is Barriss Offee's. And the showcases are just alternative arts, so they're just different arts that you can have in more shiny versions. And if you don't like them, that's fair enough. If you do like them, that's fair enough. Because remember, when it comes to alternative arts, art is just subjective, so it only matters on your view of them, because you'll be one playing them. And Barriss Offee, in my opinion, is one of the better arts we've had in the game. It's such a really nice art. It just looks really cool. So that is the leader, and let's get into the next bit of information. So this is the part where I would normally go to the basics, explaining about the bases, also about the other basic information like aspects, the penalty, ratios, and things like that. So if you're a brand new player or a newer player to TCGs, you'd have all that information in one go. But I've kind of just cut that and put it into a separate video because it's a bit repetitive doing the same information. This is quite generic, basic information. In every video, repeating myself when it's easier just doing one video. And I did even though the feedback was usually quite positive with players that are new who needed it, found it really nice to have that included and very helpful. There were some people who just couldn't figure out how to use the chapters to like skip ahead. So sometimes we're a bit annoyed, like basically with the comments saying that it was not really needed, even though newer players did appreciate it. So what I've gone and done instead, which should have a little card show at the top, is I've done it into a separate video where every set I'm going to go over the basics of the game, updating with that set. And since set 5 being the set we're on now, since I did the one beforehand, I put all the information, like basic information, everything you need be in that one, especially since we got in this set a brand new mechanic to help explain the basics. So if you're a brand new player or newer player, you got all the information there in one go. And for every set going forward, I'll then update with a new video just going over the basics of that set. So check that out and then come back if you need it. If you're not a newer player or new TCGs, let's carry on with the video. Right, so with the aspect options, every leader has 4 different options. Now you can get some leaders that have more options depending, but you usually got 4 options. Now technically there's 5, but the 5th one is just the aspects just 2 aspects, being the aspects you get on your leader, because we do have a base that has no aspect. Gives you more health than usual, but you lose it on an aspect, which isn't relevant and hasn't really seen much playing outside of like less than a handful of leaders, and even then it's not really that viable, so they haven't really put it on. But if you want to do so, you can just do the same thing and just put a base and have 1 less aspect. But usually, depending on what base you add with your leader, you get 4 different aspect combinations. You always get Villainy and Cunning with Barriss Offee, and then depending on what aspect base you get, you have one of these 4 options. You either get double yellow, yellow blue, yellow red, or yellow green. So those are different options, and what we're going to do for this video is go through each different one, see what you have available for Barriss that can help her out, and see which ones are beneficial and ones that aren't worth running. So the first one we're going to go over is double Cunning, because, well, you might as well kind of see what is available from Barriss herself, since she provides you with the Cunning aspect and Villainy aspect, and also see if double Cunning is worth running, because the thing with double aspect is that it's the smallest of the card pools, because you're sacrificing a whole other aspect to have access to some double aspect cards, and there's not many of them, but there are enough that sometimes warrant a good option to play, and sometimes aren't really worth it. So with Cunning here, these are the base you have. So the 2 force bases you have access to is the common base, which is well, you have the same in all aspects. So all aspects have the same kind of thing for force bases with the common ones. They're 20 health bases, which then when a friendly force unit attacks, you gain the force. So very easy to do. The most common one you have, and every aspect has the same one. And then every aspect has a rare force base. They're all 25 health bases, and they all have a different way to gain the force that doesn't always need to attack. So for the yellow one, Tomb of Elram, this is one that has an action whereby exhausting one of your own units, the force is with you. So basically, you exhaust one of your own units, gain the force. That's very easy to do, but since you're normally going to need your units to attack and want to attack to kind of win the game, because it's the only way to win the game is by doing damage, if you're using that to rest your units, then you're not really gaining the force, but you're not really doing anything. Now, you can use it for a controlling mana, but you still got to play units, and there's not really many units that gain benefits when they're rested. Now, whatever base you have, if you don't want to worry about using the force, which is not the best, since Barriss requires you to use the force of both of the effects, you have things like Petronac Arena, Nabat Village, and Mos Eisley as one of the examples of the common bases as alternative options. Now, Petronac Arena gives you more power while Barriss Offee is deployed, just 1 extra power, not really worth it for the lower health. You got Nabat Village to help increase the consistency of your opening. Make sure you open with a decent hand to make sure you play and kind of brick less. But you don't get to keep the additional cards you do get to kind of see, and you do lose your mulligan as well. And then the 30 health bases are just a standard that, like, the maximum health you can have outside of maximum you can have without a downside, and are just no effect, just different arts. Now, since Barriss needs the force on both sides, you might as well play a force base, because if you're playing off Barriss Offee, you're playing it for the effect, and you want to gain as much as possible. So I would recommend the common force basis, since the Tomb of Elram is not great. So we'll start with the Villainy side, because there's a Villainy side of Cunning and there's a Heroism side, and most of the cards that are amazing or great in an aspect or in the villainy or heroism side. And you got some good ones. Now, you don't have too many force units. Now, you need a force unit to attack using this common basis. There's not many available or even good in the in villainy side, which is the only thing it lacks. The villainy kind of lacks some solid force units, even though we got loaded in this new set. We didn't get too many that helps out the villainy side. So, in Villainy Cunning, there are only 4 force units you can get access to, and that's Adept of Anger, Shin Hati, Second Sister, and Blade and Skull in the villainy side. So there's just 4 force units you can get in the villainy side. There are some more in the other side, in the non-villainy side, but those are the 4 you have access to in villainy. Now they're pretty nice. Now, Adept of Anger is just 1 cost. I can use the force as well, and then exhaust the unit, so kind of something that Cunning likes to do. You got Shin Hati, who comes in a lot of power, not for much health. It comes in hidden and shielded as well. So protected by hidden, being attacked into for the turn she's played, and shielded, protected for damage once. You got Second Sister, which has solid stats as a 4 cost, but on attack she then mills you. You can mill cards from your own deck, and then if you mill force cards, then you get to untap resources, which is a pretty cool effect. But once again, you lack quite a few force units. You've got Blade and Skull, which also comes in hidden and is able to flash in and out by using the force. A unit that's 4 or less, so your own unit, your opponent's unit, which can be very useful. Now, outside of that, if you don't want to just focus on the force, you've got some really good stuff in the villainy side of Cunning, and a lot of it is about the underworld. So you've got some good turn 1 plays like Bazine, Natal, and Orsa, which is a very good one. Bazine being a hand control one, allowing to give you hand knowledge by looking at your opponent's hand. Discarding a card if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to. If you do, to get to replace it, so you get to have hand knowledge and rip out a card that you don't want to have. And you got Aura Sing, which is a really nice one, hidden, raid 2 as well, so pretty solid turn 1 play. You've got some good spaceships as well, like Lurking Tie and Leap P38, which are pretty useful ones. Lurking Tie being a very annoying card, which can be damaged or defeated or even captured by your opponent's cards. So if your opponent tries to do any of those kind of things, they can't do it to that. And it hits hard, and if you can eventually put a pilot on or upgrade it so it's very strong, it's very hard to take out. And P38 just does damage when it's played and when defeated. Now, your top end cards, you've got things like Boss and Cad Bane, which is pretty nice. Boss being an ambush, and every time you do play an event, which is kind of what Barriss is kind of doing, you do 2 damage to your unit. And Cad Bane being your big top end boss card of Villainy Cunning, and allows you to capture things and also attack. And if they want to get those cards that you captured back, they have to let you draw 2 cards. You also have some good events as well, like No Good to Be Dead is a very nice one, especially you can play it cheaper with Barriss Offee, is pretty nice. And you even got Liberated by Darkness, be a nice change of heart and villainy by using the Force. Now in a normal Cunning, you have got more good cards as well, so more useful cards and good cards. You got things like your Force units being Mysterious Hermit, Dooku, Life Wind Sage, and Sorcerer's Tund. Now these are like your ever 4, so there's a never 4, only 4 force units in Cunning, in just a normal side of Cunning, so still lacking, she's lacking force units in her own aspects, but there's some pretty interesting ones like Mysterious Hermit can ambush, can get you to force straight on turn 1, play out, as long as there's something to attack into, gain the force, so you can start doing it from turn 2 onwards. You got Dooku, which comes in hidden and can re-trigger hidden when played. Life Wind Sage is just stronger if you're putting out something exhausted, and Sorcerer's Tund, pretty good stats, but it's only got shielded as their effect for such a high cost. Now, every good turn 1 plays you've got are things like Crafty Smuggler for Favourable Delegate. Now, Crafty Smuggler is pretty nice, comes in shielded, it's pretty nice to put that one have turn 1 to kind of stay on the board. And Favourable Delegate is quite a nice one, where it's got 1 played, that draws you a card, but when defeated makes you discard a card. So it's a nice way to ditch things if you want to, if you need them for certain effects. But it's also one that where you can bounce things back to hand, like one of Cunning's kind of identities is bouncing things back to hand. You can do it with Favourable Delegate, because if he's only discards if he's defeated, so if you play it and draw a card and then bounce it back, you can then go ahead and draw a card, no discard. Or you can even use it as a way to use, now there are 2 of them to print out anything that's a Republic, which is quite unique to have for a villainy leader. Now with some events, because Cunning has a lot of good events, you have things like Sheer and Flurry allowing you to ambush with a force unit, which is like Timely Invention but in yellow, just instead of being able to be smuggled, like resource and then play out by smuggle. You do it but only on force units, and then you take 2 less damage from the next time you take damage, which is pretty cool. You've got Psychometry as well, it's being a nice way to choose a card you discard pile and look at the top 5 cards of your deck for a card that has the same trait in it, so pretty easy to do it and draw it. You've got Surprise Strike as a nice way to kind of attack with a boost. Tip the Scale and be nice at hand control. Now there are 2 of them that cheat in things, as long as you've got 1 unit on board, they'll cheat something in with the same trait 2 turns earlier. and waylays would be like temporary removal by bouncing something on the board back to the hand that's not a leader. So you got some really nice stuff in Cunning, so it's really cool. And then you got some villainy stuff as well. Remember, that villainy is not just an aspect that's put on cards with the other coloured aspects, but also has cards on its own, like just villainy. You've got a few more force units, so it brings up about 11 force units you have in just Barriss Offee's aspects. You've got Card being a good force unit for turn 1 to be able to get you to force. Dr. being a very nice force unit that can potentially ambush if you have the force, and also comes in shielded as well. And you got the Sun, which is a pretty good one, a more late game one, but just while you have the force, he makes it so all your units get an extra 2+ power, so he becomes an 8/8 himself, and everything else is 2 more power strong, which is very cool. And there are some things like upgrades and stuff that you can put on units, and there's a really nice one in a certain aspect you can play with Offee. And you got Fighting Inquisitor here being a nice little tactic if you do play upgrades, because it allows you for 2 to return any force unit and any lightsaber upgrade from your discard pile back to your hand. So you can grab it as useful lightsabers, which there's quite a few of, and also a force unit for your discard pile, which is going to be good, like grabbing back the Sun or Darth Tyrannus. It's really nice. So those are the aspects you have. Those are the kind of cards, the good cards and best cards you have, or some of the, not all of them, but some of them, you can have access to Barriss. Let's check out Double Aspect and see from our first one if that's worth it for Barriss. So, Double Aspect. This is something that, something that you have access to for aspect. It's not something you see a lot in the game at the moment. It used to be something you saw fairly often early stages of the game, but recently people haven't done many Double Aspects. And that's because the card pool for Double Aspect is a lot smaller than any other aspect combo, because you're losing access to any of the other aspects to go for just, losing a whole other aspect to have access to these, for Cunning, 11 cards. And there's 11, not 12, because even though Aggression only has 11 because they had one less, it had one less for the other aspects, Cunning didn't have the same amount of Double Aspect cards as the other aspects at 12. But one of them was technically suspended. Well, it's a Double Aspect card, but it was suspended because it was just too good in a certain deck, being hand 1. So Cunning has these 11 cards it has access to, and it's probably the strongest Double Aspect combo, because Cunning just has so many better cards. Like the first 3 you got being Bodhi, Katina Bouncer, and Cunning were just so good, and for set 1, double Cunning was a good option, and it was until up into set 3. Well, I'm even up to set 4 as well. But it's recently dropped off because it's just not as useful. So what we're going to do now is look and see if this Double Aspect is worth it for Barriss. Because you'll remember, Barriss wants to gain the force, so you can play out events a little bit cheaper, and also have events that can make use of it. So looking here, the only force unit you've got is Zuckuss, which is a very high costing one, so you're not really gaining any more force units, just one. And there are some good events there, but what are good cards from this? So out of these 11 cards, there are only 5 that I feel are useful and worth it for Barriss, and that is the first 3 from original set because they're very nice. You got Bodhi Rook being a nice way to rip out your opponent's events from your hand, which could be good against certain kind of decks, and Katina Bouncer being able to bounce something back. It's not a leader back to his owner's hand, like a waylay but with a body, and even Cunning with 4 good effects you can use in any order, and even a new adventure as well, being flash in and flash out one of your own units, one of your opponent's units, and then even Mandalorian as well being a good pilot. While these are pretty nice cards, none of them, the events are pretty nice, but then you're kind of losing the access to a whole other aspect just to have the access to these. And remember, we're only lacking on force units as well, so I'd say for Double Cunning, it's not a good option to play with Barriss, because you want some more force units, which you don't really get from that. Well, you get one, but it's not as great, and also you want some other cards that can be useful to go with Barriss. So let's look at Vigilance for the next one. So next we have Vigilance, and this is the more defensive aspect. You have a lot of healing, removal, and also defense for Sentinels and shielding. So we'll start with the basis. We're going to go look at the 2 force bases you have for Vigilance. You have the standard common ones, top of the force unit getting force, and the rare one you have is Vigilance Temple. Now this one gains you the force, but only once a turn, because it's when a regroup phase starts, so that's the end of your turn, when you draw resource and then restand everything, or ready everything. If you control a unit with 4 more remaining HP, you can gain the force. So this means you can most of the time gain the force before even turn starts, so you're ready to use it, but you're limited to having only the force once a turn. And if you are prevented from having the force when you would need to get it, then you can't gain the force until you basically set up to do it for the next turn. So not the not if you're using leader like maybe Barriss, but you want to use it more often than the Force, then it's not going to be handy. But if you only use it once a turn, you don't really not have a much of a big usage of the Force, then it could be a good one. Otherwise, you just go for the normal common Force bases to use the Force in attack on the Force unit. Now, other bases, if you don't want to use the fourth effect of Offee, is you got things like Colossus, House City, and then normal 30 health bases. Colossus being the one that has the most health in the game, 35, but the downside is you have one less opening card in your hand, being 5 instead of 6, and that can impact you because it's one less option, means you start with only 3 cards in your hand at the first beginning of the game, instead of 4 like any other ones. If you get hand controlled, you're going to have a hard time, but you do get 5 more health. You've got Power City, which gives Barriss an extra 1 health, as the opposite to Petronac Arena, but is that 1 health going to be worth having that lesser health? Who knows? And then you got 30 health ones if you want if you don't really like any error bases, but normally you're going to go for a Force base to get a full effect Offee. So we're going to talk about Anakin because there's always going to be means to talk about Anakin, because if you're playing blue, it's such a great legendary. If you're playing blue, you're going to want to try and get the full effect of it, because while just minusing something by 3/3 is pretty good, getting both the effects off, both as one plays off the minus something by 6/6 or 2 things by 3/3 is incredibly strong. So we're always going to look at what can a leader do or incorporate to be able to get the full effect. And there are some pretty nice cards. You can have things like Greedo as a card that, when defeated, you can discard a top card of your deck, and if it is an event, do 2 damage. But then if you use that and then mill a heroic card, that can help fulfill it. You got Favorable Delegate, which when played draws a card, but when defeated, discards a card from your hand. So if you need that on board to be defeated, you can then choose to discard a heroic card if you have one, and set that way. Or you can simply use Bamboozle. This is the easiest way for villainy decks or villainy leads to basically get the full effect, because it's got an alternative cost where you can discard a Cunning card from your hand to instead of paying its cost. So you can discard a Cunning card instead of paying its cost to play it, and it just exhausts the unit and return all upgrades on it to its owner's hand. And it's a heroic unit, so you can essentially play it in a villainy deck without incurring aspect penalty by discarding another Cunning card, which if it's a Cunning Villainy one, you then set up both the cards you need for Anakin in one action, which is pretty cool. Now for the villainy side of Vigilance, you got some really nice cards, and you got a fair few Cunning cards. Now you got some cheaper ones, but you get some more expensive ones. You got things like you got nicest package of Karis, Talos Assassin, or Dak, pretty really nice ones. With Karis and Talos Assassin using the Force, but in good ways to reduce the stats on a card, to reduce the power and health. And Old Daka being a way to defeat them so they can replay them, or defeat them and replay them, essentially getting them and then reviving them so they can trigger their effects both when defeated or when on played. And then you've got other ones like Morgan Elsbeth, be a nice one to even defeat your own units to then draw cards, draw more. And you've even got things like Vader and Supreme Leader Snoke being more expensive ones that have really strong effects. Then also you got to remember, don't skip out on the Space Arena, because there are some Space Aggro decks, Space Focus decks. So you got some good ones like Ferna 4, Devastating Gunship, and Avenger, jumping up in cost there, which are pretty handy ones. And you even got a lot of good removal. You got some really nice ones at Power Dark Side. No Glory only results Super Laser Blast as removal events in blue as well. Be a nice way to just make your opponent defeat the units or kill your opponent's units. Make sure any problems can get taken out very easily without needing to attack in. And in the normal side of Vigilance, you've got some less powerful cards, but you've got some pretty nice ones, especially with Force units. You've got Own Lives while not being a Force unit. It's a way to give you some healing with Restore. And also when defeated, it helps you find a Force unit from the top 5 cards of your deck. Then you've got some good Force units like Secret Sage and like Sister Warrior. Both good turn 1 plays. The Secret Sage comes in shielded, so he's a little bit easier to stick around. And nice Sister Warrior, if she is defeated, lets you draw a card. And you've got other ones like Chirrut being a nice one to use the Force as an alternate way to use Force outside of Barriss. That also is a good Sentinel. Kiadi is maybe a way to kind of get you more cards depending on how many units you have on board. And Anakin, as we've seen, is very strong. You also have some very nice upgrades like Entrench, being a nice way to use offensively or defensively. And then lots of good removal. And since you're using the Force, you even have Shatter Point, which is a nice way to basically be a better Vanquish by using the Force. And then they all have different costs to all the removal events have different costs, different ways to defeat anything. Like most of them are restrictions on what they can defeat, whereas things like Ravel's Fall, which is a little bit more expensive, can defeat absolutely anything. So, is Vigilance a good aspect to have for Barriss? Because you remember, by the looks of it, like we've just seen, there's a lot more Force units you can incorporate. They might make sure you're gaining the Force. There's some good events that you might want to play like some of these remove events to not only just remove your opponent's units, but play out a little bit earlier, thanks to Barriss. So is it a good option? And I say yes, because you've got some very good events to play off of Barriss, that you can especially pay a little bit cheaper, is really good, and some really strong cards help you to take control of the game and also win the game. So let's look at the next one, being Command. So next we have Command, and this is the ramp aspect. We get into seeing what the ramp cards we have are. But first we're going to start with the bases, because you've got the two you got two force bases. So you got standard common bases requiring you to have a force unit, but the rare base for Command is Mystic Monastery. Now this is a pretty simple one and pretty easy one to get in force, because it's just an action, gain the force. So you use it, gain the force. But there must be a restriction for a base just giving you the force, and that is the fact that you can only use it 3 times in a game. Now, you might be thinking, with Barriss wanting to use it multiple times, just because both her sides, when she's deployed and when she's not, allow you to use, you need to use the force to be able to use her effect. But, is it, do you really need to use it a lot in the game, or is 3 times enough? And I would say it could be a good option, because you can use things like, using this to gain the force, you can use things like Resupply, which is one of the easiest ramp cards to use. You use it turn 1, so you can go to your turn 2 with 4 resources, which is pretty cool, and have some really strong some events that you want to use, meaning you get that ramp turn 1, so you're ahead of the curve straight away. Now, if you don't want to use any of those force bases, you also have things like Entry Creation Lab, or ECL for short, Data Vault, and also normal 30 health ones. Now, green does have some of the best bases in the game, and these are these are the best bases probably on here. You got Entry Creation Lab, which is a very solid one, especially when you've got units that are, if they had ambush, would be really strong. This can help them get ambush as long as they're 6 or less, by playing them out with ambush, as long as you still pay the cost though. And even Data Vault being a way to gain more health than normal, because normal is 30 health, but gaining more than that. And the only downside is including 10 more cards in your deck, so your minimum deck size becomes 60 around 50. And then the 30 health bases being the whatever options you have. But green has some of the best bases in the game, so you've got plenty of options to choose from. Now for ramp cards, in the villainy side, you've got one slightly better than the heroic side, and you've got these ones. You've got Super Laser Technician, very easy one. As long as resupply carrier being units that can ramp. It's pretty simple. When it's defeated, you put it in play as a resource, but unlike the rest, it comes in and it readies itself, so it can be used straight away, which is very good, very unique to the ramp cards. But it's a unit, so it needs to be defeated first, so you play it out. You do it as early as turn 2, but then we'll gain your resource, and you can always attack into a base or ramp to one of your opponent's units to defeat it. Resupply carrier is the most expensive one, it's 6, but it's a simple play it, ramp, but it's more late game, so if you want to keep ramping further and further, it'll be a very handy one. You got Price on your Head, which is the cheapest one, but it's got more more steps to it, where you got to put on a unit, then defeat that unit to then gain the bounty, which is ramping from the top of your deck. So you got to do extra steps to ramp, but it could be a cheap one. Then you got Resupply, which is the easiest one to use. Just play it and ramp it to your resources. Very easy. And with Barriss, especially if you're playing Mystic Monastery, do this turn 1, so you're ramping straight up from the first turn of the game, which is very unique. I don't think any other leader can really do. So that is that for the ramp cards. Very good ones, and a nice way to increase your resources so you can play out more things or bigger things quicker. And then on Villainy, you don't have many force units. You only have 3 force units in the Villainy side of Command, and they're all expensive ones. And they are 8th Brother, Darth Vader, and Maul. And they all have ambush, so they can gain the force if you've got the common base. And they also have very strong effects. I'll be using the force like 8th Brother to make the thing stronger. Darth Vader plant more than its cost worth of units, and Maul will be able to pierce damage through attacking, maybe even let something else do damage for him. Now, other units you got that you can are pretty nice are things like Salacious Crumb, Super Laser Technician, and Dark Trooper. Dark Trooper being a good Sentinel. Crumb being some nice healing plus also small chip damage, and then Super Laser Technician being nice ramp. And these 3 can even be played out from Vader if you see him among the top 10 as well. You also have some good spaceships like Invisible Hand, be able to, if you go for a droid focus or get some more droids in your deck, which could be a good one. And even have more ways to get a heroism side card on board, but then you don't really need that for Anakin. But you can have that for Anakin if you want to, because you can play off Palpatine's Return, and it's a way to kind of get more things on board, and pretty strong static card. You even have some bigger spaceships as well, like Relentless and Devastator, offer some really good effects. Relentless shutting down your opponent's first event they play a turn, and Devastator being a huge sentinel on the space arena, and also doing damage when it's played equal to the number of resources, which is usually going to be a minimum of 10. You also have Craven Power, being a very good upgrade upon a unit, power up and then do damage, maybe take out a unit. And you even have some powerful events being like Overwhelming Barrage and Palpatine's Return. Overwhelming Barrage being a different version of Craven Power, but maybe a little bit better. So you get a temporary boost, but then you get to, rather than do it damage to one unit, you get to do it as you choose among units on board. And Palpatine's Return is basically just a revival card for anything, and it comes at a cost reduction at 6 because it costs 6 for the unit. And if it's a Force unit, it costs 8 less instead. Now, on the normal command side, there's a little bit less on the cards, but since you have Force focused deck, there's some good Force ones. You've got Cunning Villainy is a nice way to heal, isn't a Force related, but it's a nice way to heal. Maz Kanata is one of his battle tricks for Force, being an attack with a Force unit, gain 2 extra power for that attack. The other Temple Guards can attack using Ambush to turn it's played, and also has Restores to healing. Then you got Digger Master, which is a nice way to use the Force outside of Barriss, so you're not, if you're relying on using it just on Barriss, you might not always want to play an event every turn. The Day Master can help you find Force units when it's played or in defeat by using the Force. You want Agent Callus and Trenterac, which both ambush. Trenterac only ambushes if your opponent controls a Force unit, whereas Ancient Callus will always ambush, but then if while he's on board, if a unique unit is defeated, you get to draw a card. You also got some other vehicles like Resupply Caribbean Ramp and Reinforcement Walker being your top end. This is a really nice one because whenever it's played or when it attacks, you look at the top card of your deck, you either add it to your hand or discard it and heal 3 damage from your base. So a very, very nice card. More of them you get on board, the more difficult it is to kind of deal with. And you've even got General's Blade. Now this is a unit, this is an upgrade which normally reserved to the heroic side, because what it requires to get its full effect is Jedi trait. And usually Jedi are only in the heroism side, but Barriss is very unique in that she has the Jedi trait of being a villainy leader. So this means that you can put on her to then power up by 3/3, turn into a 4/7 to a 7/10, which is a very strong leader then. And then whenever she attacks, then she's got a Jedi trait. You can then play the next unit you would play. This phase costs 2 less, which means you can cheat things in, which is pretty cool. Especially if you do this, put it on her, and only have her on the base. You can then swing, and then now if you play now there are 2 of them, you can play something out 4 turns ahead, which is very strong. You also got some events as well, like Timely Invention being a never version of Shin's Flurry, being an ambush as well, unit out, but you can smuggle this so you can resource it and play it later from your resources. You got Resupply, already gone over this, easy ramp, and you got Choose Sides, being a nice one, where you can choose one of your opponent's units, choose one of yours, switch control of it, so you give your opponent one of your lower cheap units and take one of their big powerful units. So is Commander a good one for Barriss? I would say yes it is, because you got some good ramp to try and deploy her sooner, and then really nice cards in like General's Blade being a nice thing addition for Barriss, being a unique thing for her villainy decks to kind of have, and also some very nice top-end cards which you do ramp up as well. So let's look at the last one, being Aggression. So for the last aspect we're going to cover is Aggression, and this is the one that is very damage focused and pretty strong, pretty aggressive. And for the Force bases, there's not much difference between them, but there is a few differences. So as you know, the common base is a standard when a friendly Force unit attacks, gain the Force. But for the rare one, Temple Destruction, it's when a friendly unit deals 3 or more combat damage to an enemy base, you gain the Force. So both require a unit to attack, but whereas the common ones require a specific traded one, being the Force unit, to attack, Temple Destruction just requires you to attack with a unit, and as long as it can do 3 or more combat damage to an enemy base, you gain the Force. So it opens up more options to gain the Force, which is pretty cool, and allows you to play everything that aren't Force units as well, which is cool. Now, other bases you have if you don't want to gain the Force is Target Town, Firm Oscillator, and even the Fairy Elf bases. Target Town being a nice way to finish off units that you do damage but don't finish off, or don't quite take out. And Firm Oscillator is the opposite of Data Vault, where instead of increasing your deck size, it decreases your deck size at the cost of less health. Whereas decreasing it from 45 cards minimum, from 50 cards minimum to 45. Then you got the normal 30 health bases if you don't feel you need any of those other effects on a base and want just the 30 health. So for villainy cards, you don't have too many Force units, but you have some pretty good ones. You have Acolyte Beyond is a way to gain the Force that isn't a Force unit, but just when it attacks or when defeated, it gains the Force. It's a pretty nice way to play it in turn 1. You got other Force units like got Fifth Brother, Grand Inquisitor, and some pretty nice units, pretty cool ones. Even Quintus being Seventh Sister. You've got Vader and Palpatine being some more top-end ones, with even Vader being a pilot you can put onto a vehicle as well, which is cool. So it's pretty solid units, more high-costing, not so much in terms of great cost and stuff, or like ones you can put out a little bit earlier, but still good ways to gain a force and make use of it with some strong force units for some really strong force cards. You have some good space units as well, like Carter's TIE Silencer, Ruthless Raider, and Devastator being very nice space units. Nice ways to just throw damage to your opponent's base and even help finish off the game as well. And you've got some good force upgrades and events as well. You've got Fallen Lightsaber being a very strong upgrade, one of the nice upgrade lightsaber ones you can get. And as a free cost, it gives free boost, and when it's on a force unit, when it attacks, it does 1 damage to all your opponent's ground units, which is cool. And then for force events, you've got things like Force Lightning, Force Choke being pretty nice ones. Force Lightning as a base, well, they both have effects that are just standard, but they have some benefits more benefits if a force unit's on play. So for Force Lightning, it's just standard, choose a unit, take his abilities. But if you control a force unit, you can pay extra resources, and for every extra resource you pay, you can do 2 damage to that unit you could choose. And then Force Choke, the benefit of having Force Unit on board is that it costs 1 less, and then it just standard does 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit, and if the control of that unit gains draws a card. So there's pretty good cards there for Vinny's side. And on the normal side of aggression, you still have some more Force units, not too many, but they are pretty good. You got Merrin as one that is a pretty good one to play at Zodiac's turn 2. It's also same boat as well as Jedi in Hiding. Both ones you can play at Zodiac's turn 2. Jedi in Hiding has hidden, so it can be attacked same turn as played. Whereas Merrin can attack and discard any card from your hand and do 2 damage to a unit, so help throw out damage around. Jedi in Hiding can use the Force when it's defeated, make your opponent discard a card, which is pretty cool. Then you have Cunning Voss and Sage Ventress, which are pretty nice ones that complement each other, because not only does their effect, their art match, but their effects match too. Because Quinlan's a pretty strong unit for a 4 cost that, on attack, if he has 6 or more power, he does 2 extra damage to your opponent's base, and a Sage can facilitate that by when played or on attack, giving every friendly unit plus 2 for the plus 2 power for that phase. So you can power up Quinlan, so when he attacks, he can fulfill his effects. And also, you've got other cards that aren't Force units are pretty nice, like Champ-Satula being the only ramp card outside of green, which when played, if your opponent controls more resources than you can ramp the top card of your deck, and has pretty solid stats, the opposite of Quinlan, where instead of having 5, he has 5 power instead of 5 health, and essentially his stats are reversed. And you've got Crate Dragon being a nice top end. There's even incorporated in the deck, so that way is something they can use off Force Throw to guarantee damage, and it's just when you play it out, anytime your opponent plays a card, you can do damage to either one of their ground units or their base equal to the cost of the card they played, making it a very good top end card that's mostly feared. Then for non-units, you have things like Hotshot Blaster, and this is a card that even though it's aggression, you can play in any build of Barriss, because you're normally going to use it by smuggling it out, because it's one of those smuggle cards. And the reason you can play it in any build of Barriss is because its smuggle cost is Cunning, which Barriss has. So it means you can always play it in any aspect, and basically just play it out for its normal cost of smuggling. And the best thing about the smuggling part of it is that it's a very efficient, because it combines 2 actions in one, and that is putting the card on a unit and then attacking with it there and then. Because when you smuggle it out, you can attack with the attached unit. So a very strong card and available to all versions of Barriss. And for events, you've got some really strong ones like Force Throw, Sorcerer's Blast, Daring Raid, Open Fire, and Bomb and Run, or damaging events, whereas Force Throw can be damaging, it depends if you've got a Force unit. So one of those Force cards, which if you control a Force unit, get the beneficial effects, which its effect is to make either you or your opponent discard a card. And then if you control a Force unit, you can do damage to a unit equal to the cost of the card discarded. So you can make your opponent discard a card, which then is down to whatever they discard and what damage is done. Or you can discard your own card, and you can guarantee the damage done because you can choose what card you're discarding. So if you discard things like Crate Dragon, you're guaranteed to hit 9 damage on a unit. Now the other ones are damaging effect with different costs. So Sorcerer's Blast, 3 damage by using the Force, that costs 1. Daring Raid for 1, you can do 2 damage to a unit. Open Fire for 3 resources, you can do 4 damage to a unit. And Bomb and Run allows you to do 3 damage to every unit in that arena, even yours and your opponent's, at a cost of 5. So is aggression a good option for Barriss? Because you got some really good events, you got some really nice strong force benefits as well. I would say yes, it is. Aggression is a very nice option. Whereas very nicely being able to cheapen out some events as well, like Force Throw, Force Lightning is really cool to get the best full effect of them, and even like a resource resource cheating out like 1-cost events is very nice. So that is all the aspects. So the last thing I'm going to do is cover my preferred aspects, because this is something I've added since set 3, because it was something that was asked for in the first 2 sets when I did the series, and it's just a nice bit of information to have, a bit of help, because even though you can go through all different options, and even if some leaders have a lot of different options available that are viable, it still could be a point where you're still unsure how to play, so a little bit of help is always appreciated, really, for most people. So what I've decided to do is put in my preferred aspects, and if I were to play Barriss, I will play her command, because I like the fact that she can potentially, with Mystic Monastery, go to ramp turn 1 with resupply, and then just play a turn ahead pretty nicely with like then Super Laser Technician on the whatever cards, a 4-cost card on turn 2, and then start playing out bigger things, and even deploy her and throw on things like the General's Blade on her, so that way she can make her even bigger at 7-10, and then start cheating things out a little bit more there, and just getting the bigger benefits from that. So if I were to play Barriss Offee, to play command with her. And that is it for today, so thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch up with the next one, being hopefully tomorrow. We'll have the next one be near the villainy side of Cunning, being Grand Inquisitor. So if you're interested, stay tuned, or wait for that, or check it out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.